Hi, everyone, and happy spring equinox. Oh, I love it when the sun starts coming back north. And I have Chocolate to show you how cute he's becoming as his hair grows out. He is getting to a kind of a more fluffy, furry. It's been wonderful for him to have that short lion's cut where all of the mats and everything go away. And both he and Fluffy now are much thinner than they have been when you've seen them like little badgers. But look at how cute he is. He really is adorable. And they both know together that on Wednesday nights that I do this. And it is so funny, they play this game that they only play on Wednesday nights. But right now, Chocolate is very content, and I'm so happy because this is like living with a little creature that has an IQ of about 180, who understands everything around him and wants to get into any project that I'm working on as if I am going to do it too. And I'm sure those of you who send me your cards about your cats, I'm going to put you down, that you know what I'm talking about, that there's some of these cats they want to do what we're doing, including putting his hands on the computer keys, copying. And I love them both. Fluffy is adorable too, but Fluffy always likes to play this game of you can't catch me on Wednesday nights. So now, remember, it was a week ago on my Earthfiles YouTube channel that I was planning to fly to England this week to work with a TV documentary crew about my Earthfiles reports of the huge dark pyramid in Alaska that I began doing news updates about in 2012. And in fact, tonight at my news website, www.earthfiles.com, think of a reporter who files news about the Earth, Earthfiles, I'm going to begin reposting my 12 original Dark Pyramid news reports, starting with August 10th, 2012, updated part 1, is there a large pyramid underground between Mount McKinley and Nome, Alaska? This is a computer illustration of how the alleged large dark pyramid would gather energy from its base corners and direct it to the middle and out the vertex, which is the top point of the pyramid. This black pyramid is supposed to be deep underground, about 60 miles west of Mount McKinley, which is now renamed Mount Denali. The Dark Pyramid was known to a Navy helicopter pilot in 1978 who told another Navy pilot, quote, "This thing is some kind of power generator and it is thousands of years old, underground, and it can generate enough power to probably power the whole country of Canada," close quote. Well, by last weekend, the UK documentary producers called to tell me they would rather have me on location in Alaska in June than doing a studio-lighted interview in England. So that's why I'm here tonight. And I'll keep you posted about what's happening when we do get to June. But I'm really glad that I am here because for those of you who follow my Earthfiles news about the very strange, unsolved, loud boom reports around the world since January of 2011 to date, the booms have persisted now for 8 years, and they have repeated in cycles of time in the very same regions, sometimes the same town, a year or 2 or 3 apart, but cycling. And they are as mysterious now as they were in 2011. Like Alhambra, California, only about 10 miles northeast of downtown Los Angeles. Here is a map and Facebook alert from the Alhambra Police Department on February 22, 2016, at 9 p.m. Pacific. Quote, "About 45 minutes ago, we received several calls and messages on Facebook regarding a loud explosion here in the northern end of our city of Alhambra. Several officers heard the explosion as well. Officers responded to the callers' possible locations as well as where the callers believed the noise was coming from. Unfortunately, we were unable to locate the origin of the booms," close quote. No power outages or blown transformers or airplanes breaking the sound barrier or earthquakes. For the next 3 weeks, into March of 2016, there were dozens of reports about like half a stick of dynamite exploding close by. That's what people told police and authorities. I interviewed the city's director of administrative services, who told me he was at a city meeting on an outdoor patio at night when they all heard a very loud explosion, but they could not find any source. Well, it's happening again now in March of 2019. James Castle, a resident of Hacienda Heights, not far from Alhambra, emailed me that he and his wife have heard sounds like a bomb going off at least 20 times since November 2018, just a few months ago. The couple have also heard metallic scraping sounds, as if someone were dragging metal on pavement right behind their house. When they go to the backyard, there is nothing, but the sound persists without any known source. Scraping metal sounds and sounds like 2 railroad trains crashing head-on are descriptions that other ear witnesses have also reported in various parts of the world since 2011. And this past Sunday, March 17th, on St. Patrick's Day, again at 9 p.m. Pacific, there was another very loud explosive boom that both Mr. and Mrs. Castle heard. And then, within 15 minutes, their Ring doorbell neighborhood alert system had 60 people reporting a very loud and puzzling boom, and a couple of people also reported a bright flash of light with that explosive sound. That is another characteristic of the boom mystery since it began back in 2011. Even security cameras have captured the boom sounds with simultaneous light washing out the camera. Mr. Castle called the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office about the 9 p.m. explosive boom sounds that he and his wife and others experienced in the Hacienda Heights region, not far from Alhambra. But the sheriff said they didn't receive any calls, and maybe that is because the Alhambra and Hacienda Heights region, east of Los Angeles, is getting used to explosion sounds, even though no one understands what is happening. Now, another place that has had cycles of loud booms without explanation is the Salt Lake City and Ogden region of Utah. On January 5th, 2019, local TV and radio stations were flooded with reports of a bright flash of light followed by a loud boom. Carl Turley, a military veteran, compared the sound to an explosion like you'd hear in a battlefield, and his home security camera caught the bright flash. He told KSL-TV that, quote, "It just exploded out of nowhere, causing us in our neighborhood to kind of go into a frenzy," close quote. The South Salt Lake Police Department acknowledges that there have been boom reports for a decade without police being able to pinpoint any exact location for the boom noise, and so no answers, over and over and over. The boom mystery has been worldwide in both hemispheres. I've done nearly 200 in-depth Earthfiles reports, interviewing ear witnesses and putting audio and or video inside my Earthfiles updates whenever possible. One of the greatest puzzles is that some people swear the sound came from above, like a compression wave, down onto their house, while others will insist that the sound came from below ground because cement in garage door tracks have cracked and even people have felt a slap against the bottom of their feet. If any of you in the Earthfiles YouTube audience, wherever you are around the world, if you have heard an extremely loud, unexplained boom or metallic or trumpet-like sounds since, let's say, January of this year, just in the last 2.5 months of 2019, please let me know. You can email me at earthfiles@earthfiles.com. Again, that's earthfiles@earthfiles.com. And now, before we go to questions and answers, I would like to show you an astounding computer-generated image inside Earth. In the recent EOS report on February 27th, 2019, new geophysical computer models show 2 massive mountain regions. This is inside of our planet that stretch the whole length of continents and rise up 100 times higher than Mount Everest. Everest is 29,000 feet, or 5.5 miles. So 100 times that height is 2,900,000 feet. That means 2 549-mile-high mountainous blobs rise up from the bottom of Earth's rocky mantle above the molten mantle core. One mysterious mountain blob lies under the Pacific Ocean. The other is under Africa and part of the Atlantic Ocean. University of Maryland geologist and professor Ved Lakis says, quote, "I think that the mountain blob's real fundamental and philosophical appeal is their mystery. They are among the largest things inside the earth, and yet we literally do not know what they are, where they come from, how long they have been around, or what they do." Just think about this. Below our feet, the Earth is 8,000 miles in diameter. You go down 4,000 and you're in the center of that iron crystal core that I have talked about before at Earthfiles in here. And you come up from the 4,000 miles and you get halfway up to the Rhine that we live on. And here are these huge mountainous blobs, 100 times the height of Mount Everest. And this is something that is, they knew about them having to do with seismic waves and various things that go through the earth, that there was something that would slow the waves down. But until now, nobody has ever seen the now advanced computer generations of the size and what these might look like. And yet nobody on the surface of the earth has a clue, what are they made of? Would it be like hot jello, volcanic kind of mantle? Or would it be like magma? Or would it be something else that we can't even conceive? I love this story because it means that right on our own planet, down below our feet, below that Rhine that we live on, there is a huge mystery inside of our own planet. And this is the kind of exhilaration that I think that we all should be sharing, that we are on paths going out into the solar system and to the cosmos when we have mysteries as great in our own planet. I love it. Lori, what about questions and comments? Is she hearing me?
Sorry about that, Linda. Our first question tonight is, we want to know about your most personal recent high strangeness.
Personal recent high strangeness. Probably the one that just popped into my head is, I have shared it. I have written about it now at Earthfiles in my 3-part series on out of body. And that was the passing of my dear cat Simba. that I had had for 18 years. He was so in sync. He was one of the most wonderful creatures that I have ever been around. And as some of you know, and I'll make a short version, that the night leading up to the day when I had decided at noon I was going to put him to sleep, and I had kept him downstairs. I'm in a 2-story house, and because he was having trouble walking, he couldn't jump, he couldn't climb the stairs, he couldn't do anything, and I was carrying him around everywhere during the day. So I had fixed a place where downstairs he had water and he had food, and it was flat, and he didn't have to do anything but kind of pull himself on his legs. And why that's important to say, I had made up a decision that at noon the following day I was going to take him in for that needle that any of us who love our pets, you dread having to do that. But he was suffering too much. And there were 2 miracles. One was that at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4, I was waked by scratching on the door. And I got up out of bed and opened up the door, and there was Simba. He was right there at the door. He had climbed, I say climb, he had pulled himself on his front legs up 2 flights of stairs. And when I saw this, the miracle of this cat, the miracle of life, the miracle of a soul energy that could do that, I scooped him up and I sat in bed until 8 o'clock in the morning just holding him. And he purred the entire time. And then, after that terrible moment where I had made a decision that I was willfully going to help him go to another dimension. And as I have explained to you before, in the vet's office, my brother was there to help. And again, it was so strange because I was holding him and he was alive, and my brother took him, and then in just 3 or 4 minutes, he was back, put in my arms, and it's the stillness, and even his beautiful blue eyes were changing into kind of a color of gold. And I cried out sort of to the universe in that vet's office, Simba, where did you go? I just was holding you alive. Where did you go? And after we had buried him, and I was in such mourning and so deeply crying, for that night to come, and for me to wake up to some sort of a oval portal right above the headboard, and to see Simba right in the middle, looking totally alive, back with blue eyes and yellow, white, blue, glowing like streams of light inside of this oval. And I really did. I know it sounds silly in a way, but I really jumped. I jumped and I grabbed. I was going to get him back from whatever dimension he was in, thinking he came back. He came back to show me he's alive someplace else. I don't understand these dimensional steps, but he's showing me that it happened, and I tried to grab him. And everything just faded away. But in some measure, what Simba did, coming up those stairs, coming to me in some kind of a dimensional portal, and this was December of 2016, it is like a benchmark of some kind of confidence and strength that I feel inside myself when I say I think the soul is the most important part, and that at the moment of death there is transition, perhaps to an infinite number of dimensions, and that what you have done, what that soul has experienced in a human container or an accumulation, that's what determines where you go after the moment of death. There is something about resonant frequencies. And somehow Simba, that incredible, incredible Simba, was able to come up the 2 flights of stairs on the same day, early in the morning, that I had made a decision to help him artificially go to another dimension. And then finding myself in agony and asking, where did the life force go? And that he would somehow be able to come back that night. It's still, I've had a lot of experiences with a lot of high strangeness in my life. But there is something about this. I hope it has been okay to retell it. Maybe some of you have not heard it, and I didn't go into everything. But there is something about what Simba did that was like a new benchmark, a new anchor for me personally. And I think that's why when you ask, that's what came into my mind, because it is so important. It has never left me. And that I hope in sharing it with you, that it will help give you more strength and a true conviction inside of yourself, inside of your heart and your soul, that the most important part of us is the part that we don't see on a daily basis. But I think it's the soul. And Simba came back and showed me. Another question?
Yes. Linda, are you thinking that there may be living beings in that inner earth?
It's a very interesting question. I'm sure this is going to continue to come up. Let me share something here. I have been reading some Zen and East Asian literature. And I'm going to go to that in just a moment because it helps answer maybe. Whatever these huge blobs, 100 times the height of Everest, 2,900,000 miles high. It's just mind-blowing. At this point, exactly as I was quoting that professor, we know nothing about them literally except that they're there because they slow down seismic waves and other things they try to penetrate the earth to see what's there. So on the geophysics side, on March 20th of 2019, let's say that the most that is known are these beautiful computer-generated graphics that are based completely on hard data, but the hard data has to do with frequencies going through something, and that's how they can generate what the pattern is. But they have no idea what is in them, what they're made of, when did they arrive, where did they come from, and why are they there. Now, so that's the hard geophysics. In some work that I am reading that includes a controversial book having to do with Lobsang. But the more I read this East Indian literature, the more I began to feel that all of us in the Western world would be benefited if we started reading some of the texts that have been translated from Tibet and Nepal and Bhutan and that area of the world. And here is one of the most fascinating passages that I was reading just 2 nights ago. And it was about that word, Agartha, Agartha. That comes up in a variety of Eastern, Indian, and Asian literature. Well, this is the first time that I have read words that made like some sense to what Agartha actually could be and this question. And the way it is explained by Lobsang is this. We're in a matter world. Our atoms, our molecules, our hands, my hand doesn't go through the chair because there's something called Planck's constant. And it is the distance between the electrons, the protons, the neutrons, quarks. And because that distance is absolutely precise in this matter universe, so that matter can interact with matter, my hands don't go through the chair. But what if we really don't understand dimensions? What if, even in the matter universe, that there can be other dimensional penetrations through something like a portal? And that the portals are like freeway connections. And the freeway connections might be from 3 billion light years away to the Earth or Saturn inside of this matter universe, but portals might also be the jumping points between the matter universe and, let's say, the astral plane, which is supposed to be the closest next dimension that is supposed to surround this universe. And then how many? Depending upon which theory or hypothesis you have, there's varying numbers of possible dimensions. Some today even argue there could be infinite number of dimensions. Well, let's just stick with this analogy that surrounding our universe is another dimension. And now let's go to my 88 piano keyboard metaphor. You got the white keys and you have the black keys. Let's think about our matter universe as being one of those keys. And that the astral plane, another dimension that surrounds this universe, is another key. And that there are consciousnesses in the astral plane and perhaps other dimensions, just like in other keys. And let's say our matter universe is middle C. They know how to resonate at a frequency that creates a collapse in a magnetic field that opens up a portal in the middle C key. And that means that this frequency knows how to generate a frequency that will connect to the middle C frequency, and then these two keys in the 88 maybe temporarily have a connection, and things can go in between. The Lobsang story about Agartha is that where scientists say we have a huge crystal iron sphere at the center of our planet, which we do. It is 2/3 the diameter of our moon. Something that big, made out of a crystal form of iron, is at the center of our Earth. That's hard, that's dense. And it rotates in a pool of liquid iron. And the sphere moves this way, the liquid moves this way. That sets up the dynamo, those opposite directions. The dynamo is what makes the magnetic fields of our Earth that come up out through the poles, and you see all of those drawings, and the magnetic fields of our planet protect us from solar winds and cosmic rays. It's a wonderful, wonderful physical machine. Well, what if something, not biological human, but something conscious and with advanced intelligence about dimensions, decides or knows how to penetrate the matter world, not just the Earth, maybe others. And they know how to do it with a portal. And if they can do a portal, maybe they can set up something that is like a note within that middle C note. And that could be a Gartha, a dimension within our matter world. But getting in and out of a Gartha, that's a whole other level of knowledge. And what I'm trying to lay out is I'm thinking for the first time in my life quite seriously about this whole issue of layers of dimensions, but penetrations of dimensions through portals. In my Navy SEAL commander, Spartan 1, when he talks about how there are portals that we have on the Earth, there are portals that connect to Saturn, Mars, the Moon. It is as if there have been, and I've had other discussions reinforcing what Spartan 1 says, that portals are not mythological and they're not hypothetical, that portals that deal with magnetic field jump points dimensionally are a reality. Who has been left out of this news? Worldwide humanity. We get it in science fiction television. We get it in science fiction Hollywood movies. And in some strange way, since the day the Earth stood still, it is like the government of the United States has been dropping all of this material that they keep learning about what is going on in our universe and perhaps other dimensions and portals, but they only allow us to know through fiction. And I am hoping that this year or next at the latest, we're going to move from always hiding everything in fiction to finally having the strong, cold shower that we're not alone in this universe, and that we all start having these kinds of dialogues that we're having at Earthfiles YouTube channel all over the world, to be waking up that all of these maybes, what ifs, are really real. I'm really hoping that's going to happen, and then all of you will join me in the YouTube channel broadcast of our lives. Any other?
You bet. Linda, is there a connection between the super ancient pyramids and crop circles?
Well, that is a really interesting question, too. I love you guys. This is fantastic. I'm going to give you what I would put in the category of a speculation and a hypothesis that I have. When I was in England, I started going to do crop circle research in 1992, and I went almost every year for 10 years. And it was 93. And I was out in one of the huge patterns, just to assure you that at the beginning, in the early 90s and the late 80s, that the crop formations that were coming down in England in various places that were some almost 1,000 feet long and had these patterns, they weren't being done by humans. No, we all know that. All the Doug and Dave stuff came later when MI6 and the CIA wanted to have a counterintelligence explanation. And so I think they were paid. It was a counterintelligence move to put something out in the world so 2020 in 60 minutes and the media would go away. Oh, crop circles are just being done by people. The big ones, the incredible ones, were not. All of us know. The science of them confirmed that something extraordinary was happening at an energy level and changing all kinds of things in the structure of the plant. So in 1993, I was in one of those spectacular ones. And a man literally walked up to me, complete total stranger. He said, I have a friend. And when people say this and then they connect it to the CIA, NSA, DIA, I've learned they're probably talking about themselves, but they have to keep it removed. But this is what he said. I have a friend in the CIA who says that our government has satellites and a whole bank of computers, and that they are trying to get photographs of every crop formation that occurs on the northern and the southern hemispheres of the Earth, all tied with exactly where the latitude, longitude is, and exactly what date and time. And that they are trying to follow up this hypothesis, that what was making all of these patterns on the surface of the Earth were time travelers from a distant future who were using these markers on the skin of the Earth in the plants to judge, monitor, refine, improve their time travel to our planet. Now, let's go another step. There were patterns that could come down in the same field. I'm thinking of Windmill Hill right now. There was what's called an eightfold geometry. That's something that has 8 petals, 8 sides, 8 lines, and the English always would call the number a fold. An 8-fold pattern and a 6-fold pattern. And they came down in this big, huge area of around Windmill Hill. A bunch of us were out. We went into the 6-fold, and it felt there's an energy buzz that was with crop formations. You could feel something different in some of them immediately on your skin, in your mind. It's hard to explain, but everybody experienced this. And then we walked about 300 or 400 feet to the 8-fold geometry. And my friend, who I was with, and myself, when we got into the 8-fold geometry, headache, sick. We had to leave early. That led to a discussion. Are 2 completely different forces, intelligences involved here? Are the ones that are in the circles, the 3-fold, the 6-fold, the 9-fold, are they coming from light and positive? Are the 8-fold and others, are they coming from something dark? Is there a war going on in the energies that are putting down these huge, incredible formations in the fields? Is it itself a reflection of something that is in conflict? Now, the geometries. When you look back through the history of our planet, the number 3, triangles, the Trinity, 333, have always been associated with something that was powerful, positive, redeeming, rejuvenating, reincarnative. It could be that just like those piano notes, that frequencies are the huge game in the universes and dimensions. And what frequencies interact with, whether it's in the matter world or something like Agartha that our hands, we wouldn't even be able to interact with it, but could be a real dimension. That what has been putting the geometries, the different geometries in different places, repeating latitudes and longitudes over a timeline, crop formation that is on one side of the world, if you knew the truth, had an antipode on the other side of the earth, as if there is something about the geometries themselves that are specific mathematically, like a language or like the frequencies and the notes on a piano. And that you have to be of a mind that has been educated about spherical geometries and trigonometries to begin to appreciate everything that was happening in the 70s to the 80s and then into the early 90s in crop formations on this planet. Time travelers, other dimensionals, advanced intelligences, playing for some reason, or that the geometries themselves in the crop that is standing and laid down is not only a mathematical language, it is self-activating software. This came up in a series for those of you who subscribe to Earthfiles and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can go to my www.earthfiles.com, type in the search dragonfly, and it will bring up, I did probably 20 or 30 in-depth reports from around 2007, 2008, having to do with sudden dragonfly patterns that were showing up. People were seeing, a few were photographing, and they had patterns, very bizarre patterns on sides, the tails of these aerial objects. And then in around that year, around June, like these reports have been coming for 2 or 3 weeks, and then Lex at Coast to Coast and me, we both got communication from a man who called himself Isaac. And he downloaded for us documents and images that he said that he admitted that he had snuck out of a highly classified Defense Department, almost experimental laboratory approach to research in Palo Alto, California. And it was all about self-activating software. The patterns in the diagrams that came with his documentation were very much like many of the patterns in crop circles. And I got to talk with him a couple of times, and I got to communicate with him through private email. And I asked him if he could please explain to me his concept of self-activating software. He said, the extraterrestrial, and this was defined as extraterrestrial technology being back engineered in an underground laboratory in Palo Alto University, and this was a scientist who was involved in it. He said they were dealing with glass-like ET technology that they knew was holographic, that every piece of it contained all of the software, that the entire, like the Dragonfly drone, or a UFO, or a triangle, or whatever, the entire craft is its own self-activating computer hardware software. And that the way to grasp this, the way he explained it to me, he said, on the simplest level, Linda, you work with a lot of paper, you type in a typewriter, you print out in a computer. And he said, this is what self-activating software would be. You don't even have to pick up the 8.5 by 11 white piece of paper. It will be made with the self-activating substance. It's not paper. It can look like paper, but it is made so that all you have to do is direct your eyes at that paper. You think, I want this to go to John Smith at 817 Walnut Street, and I want it to be there at 10:30 this morning. And you think that, and you add, here are the sentences that I want on this, we'll call it self-activating software. And it's, Dear Mr. Smith, could we meet on Thursday afternoon for lunch to discuss the new program that we are opening up in Singapore? Name, address, phone number. And all you have to do, you don't have to type keys or anything. You just think it. You think it in the language you want it. English, Chinese, Mandarin, whatever it is. Now, not only does this 8.5 by 11 substance form everything you wanted exactly where you wanted by just thinking it, that substance then rises out of your office, knows how to work its way through a building, or maybe there are special chutes by this time for these self-activating software substances, goes down to Walnut Street, knows exactly where to go, how to get there, appears at this office, has these sentences, and then that person, all that person has to do is think, okay, yes, Thursday will work, meet you at lunch at Tiffany's at 8th and Spring Street. Forms, paper, I'm calling it a paper, but for this it's self-activating software substance, goes back to where I started, and I never had to do any interaction with a machine of any kind, just thinking. Now, that kind of self-activating software, take that analogy that scientist gave me and translate it over to crop formations. A couple of decades of all these various geometries that have been placed all around the spherical geometry of our planet. What if their real intention was self-activating software? But to do what? To have what impact? To interact with some of us extremely positively, and in other patterns, extremely negatively. What I've just shared with you, in my own personal opinion, I think self-activating software is the key to advanced intelligences, and that the crop formations on this planet might have set in motion something that is supposed to go on for a century. But what was the agenda? I would love to hear from you guys. If my words have provoked anything in your own minds, your own experiences in crop circles, I would love to know what some of you who are in science think about self-activating software, that the entire surface of our planet could be handled and interacted with by self-activating software geometries. And that, to me, extends to what has been described to me of the surface pyramids and the underground pyramids being a key to what 500,000 or 500 million years ago, 500 million years ago, that there were intelligences from someplace else in this universe, the pyramid builders, that could take the entire planet, like we've experienced with crop formations, only build pyramids above ground and below ground to do all free energy, free communication, and that we are disconnected in this current round of humanness. We are disconnected from those concepts. So crop formations, I think, are much more profound, and that Doug and Dave were never the explanation for anything. That was a classic example of counterintelligence. Let's see. We've got about 10 more minutes. How about another question or two?
Absolutely. Here's the next one. Linda, do you think, quote, they, close quote, are tunneling underground in all of these places? What are your thoughts, please?
And when you say places, can you get back from whoever is writing in the chat what places they mean?
You were talking about the booms at that point, so they're referencing the locations of the sound.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the booms. Okay, let me throw back the many people who have insisted, including a Navy captain retired in Florida, who called me in complete excitement because it was so dramatic that his house was hit by a compression wave from above. And he was very smart and had worked in the Navy for 20 years and had a good sense of things like this. So many people have said things have hit from above down. So that wouldn't have anything to do with tunneling. But then there are all the other cases where even a mayor in Wisconsin, about 4 or 5 years ago, the mayor went out with city engineers because they were having a whole series of booms that went on day after day, night after night. And she's out with one of her city engineers, and they had had a boom like at 1 o'clock, and now it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And she said she had was walking in a street and went to put her foot up on a sidewalk, and boom, and that her foot was slapped by the sidewalk and it hurt. So underground tunneling, I know that it is a logical question, but we're talking about booms that have come from above or from the ground up in places like near Cannes, which is a small holiday place going up the east coast of Australia, where you can go out and do deep sea fishing and all sorts of things. It's very wild and beautiful. Well, they had a whole series of very bizarre, loud booms there, and there's no construction. Now, people could say, well, what if governments are trying to go underground in various places where they think that there are ETs hiding out in the earth? It's possible, but there is even less evidence of that happening in these far-flung places like Australia, New Zealand. You have to go all the way around the world. The booms have happened in the smallest places, in Europe, in countrysides. So this is one of the problems that as a journalist I have all the time. You start dividing what are ear witnesses and eyewitnesses, and you have, here's a folder, and these people saw a blast of light in the sky, hit a security camera before the boom. It's not very much time, it's about a half a second, and I've seen some of these videos, but the boom comes, or the light comes first, ta-ta, and then the big, huge boom. So that seems to be an antecedent in light that would have nothing to do with tunneling machines. I'm convinced that the National Programming Office Continuity of Government program that goes back at least to the 70s and was really going full bore around the 80s, CNN had two whistleblowers, backlighted, voice altered in 1988. I watched the documentary, I've never forgotten it, with some people that were at a conference in Los Angeles. And we all got into a hotel room to watch this disclosure by CNN with whistleblowers. And those two whistleblowers, backlighted, voice altered, said that they had worked underground with huge boring machines on, and knew that there were 9, this is 1988, that there were 9 continuity of government National Programming Office facilities built deep underground, that if there was some kind of a national emergency, a nuclear missile was coming and it was aimed at Washington, D.C., they were going to get a contingent government that was on a list, and the CNN report said it wasn't the voted-in government, it was a government of military and intel. And I remember that there was a lot of flack about that the next day after CNN had reported this. But they would be taken down into, I guess, if they're 9, it would depend on if it's going to be a nuclear bomb that would take out half the United States, then maybe they would move them here, or a city, they would move them here. And a physicist told me that one time he had a discussion with Edward Teller, who was in charge of Ronald Reagan's Star Wars during the early 80s, and that Edward Teller said to this physicist who was telling me about this, he said, Edward Teller said to the physicist, I would like to have you come work with me, and you can work on, and it was this very specific program that this physicist was working on. I would like to have you develop this, and money will be no object. You can spend whatever you want. The only thing I require is that you sign a contract that you would agree to go underground for, I think it was 3 years, 2 or 3 years. And the physicist said, I looked at Edward Teller and I said, do you mean that you would expect me to sign an agreement that I wouldn't see my wife and my family for 2 years? I'd be underground. Would I be able to communicate with them? No. But, Teller said, I know you love to play tennis. And where I would have you go underground, you could play tennis every day under a blue sky, white puffy clouds, and the sun. And that physicist said, Linda, we've got underground installations in which they have tried to reproduce what it's like on the surface of the earth in installations underground. Well, that was the early 1980s. The CNN program was 1988. So today, in 2019, who knows what we've been doing in North America, between Canada and the United States, and doing underground installations. It still wouldn't explain the big boom and the light on the east coast of Australia and a small population, the tiny country facilities, areas that have been in Europe, Mexico, Central America, South America, where people have had these huge booms, and there's no sign of any industrialized work anywhere. So that's why it's complicated. And if you do what I do, you start getting files. Here is one scenario, here's another, here are these characteristics, here are hard evidence, here are speculation, and you start laying them out. When it comes to these booms, metallic scrapings, trumpet sounds, which have been part of this, and all of that, what in the world? What happened in 2011? That's when this started. I have a clear beginning time in 2011. What was it in 2011 that all of this started around the world and it's still ongoing today? I think we're at the close of our hour. I really enjoyed this. I hope that all of you that are coming to the YouTube Earthfiles channel will try to talk to your friends and people that you know about subscribing. Keep subscribing so that we can keep this growing and having these dialogues and reaching more and more of the world with information that might help you with whatever headlines are going to come down about we are not alone in this universe. And that is a fact. Thanks a lot from me, from Fluffy, from Chocolate, and I'll see you next Wednesday.